Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to welcome everyone, my council colleagues, members of staff, and those attendees who I see have joined us either via Zoom or maybe watching on YouTube. This meeting of Luneberg Town Council for May 5th, 2020. Before we actually get started with the business that's slated for us on our agenda, I'd like to acknowledge the fact that even while we're enduring all of the challenges that we are going through with this state of emergency due to COVID-19, that this past week we've experienced on top of that and earlier tragedies in April, significant loss of life with the helicopter crash from the HMCS Fredericton off the coast of Greece. And having said that, we are mourning the loss of 6 military personnel. And on behalf of the council and the staff and all of the citizens of the town of Luneberg, I want to extend the sincere sympathy, our sincere sympathy to the families, friends, and colleagues of these cherished individuals. Captain Brendan Ian McDonald of New Glasgow, Nova Scotia, Captain Kevin Hagan of Nanaimo, BC, Captain Maxime Miron of Trois-Rivières, Quebec, Sub-Lieutenant Matthew Pike of Truro, Nova Scotia, Master Corporal Matthew Cousins of Guelph, Ontario, and Sub-Lieutenant Abigail Cowbrough from Toronto, Ontario. So I would like you all, or ask you all, to please join me for a moment of silence in their honor. Thank you all for that tribute, and just a little bit of sunshine to get us back on a more optimistic note. I heard on the news just this morning of a 100-year-old resident of the Northwood complex who has survived COVID-19. So I think she's very symbolic of the hope and optimism that we all should hold in our hearts as we continue to work through this very difficult time in our history. So that all being said, I would ask for, look to my council colleagues to get down to business, and I'll ask for a motion to approve our agenda, please. Moved by Councillor Risser, seconded by Councillor Carnevale. Any comments to make with respect to that? I would just note again that we do have items bolded. We certainly have some items of high priority that we will work to get through first in the time we've allotted, but otherwise I'll call for the question. All in favor? And there's no one to oppose, so the motion is carried. Thank you. And next on the agenda is I will be looking for a motion to approve our minutes of our April 28th, 2020 council minutes, please. And I see Councillor Mosier and Councillor Croft moving and seconding the approval of those minutes. Any errors or omissions? There's no indication of any, so all in favor? So motion is, and any opposed? There's just a late indication there. No, but no one's opposed. So those minutes are now approved and will go into the record book as such. And we're moving right into then the most significant item on our agenda for today, which is under a regular heading of public hearings and presentations. We have to deal with the public hearing with respect to the ABCO Industries application to amend our municipal planning strategy map 2 future land use map by removing 6 properties on Tannery Road from the architectural control area. And having said that, I will turn the floor, the virtual floor, over to our planning manager, Ms. Dawn Sutherland, to guide us through this very important process. Please, Ms. Sutherland. I think we need to unmute Ms. Sutherland.
Yeah,
there we go.
There we go.
Thanks.
Okay. Are we good now? Yeah. Okay. So this is the proposed amendment that is before you for public hearing. It's a map amendment. And these are some of the rules that if we had an in-person meeting that would apply. So public hearing, the purpose of it is to provide an opportunity to make views known. I'm just going to minimize you there, Mayor. So, okay, just hang on. Sorry, there. So a public hearing is required under the Municipal Government Act. And I can't see all the councillors, but all the councillors that are present are eligible to vote. If a council member is not present, they cannot vote on whether it comes into effect or not. So general rules of conduct that apply to all our public meetings. When the floor opens up or the Zoom opens up for public comments, we ask that you please state your name and civic address so that we can record it in the minutes. Of course, please be respectful of others' opinions and go through the chair. So if you wish to speak, you go through the mayor as the chair. Council members can also question any speaker or myself. And oops. And it's important to note that when the public hearing finishes, it's closed and you can no longer submit any submissions. So this is our outline. The public hearing, I'll make a presentation as the town planner, be a presentation by the applicant, Mr. Jason Huskelson, representing ABCO. Our written submission, we've had a few, and oral submissions. That will be anybody participating through Zoom. So let's get started. This is the process to change policy and the steps we've taken so far and the future steps. So I'll go through them so you understand the process. Council will accept an application as they normally do, and they send it first to our Planning Advisory Committee, and they will schedule a public information meeting. So when we schedule a public information meeting, we send out letters to everybody within 300 feet of the properties. We post a notice in Town Hall, and we advertise a public information meeting, which is held before a Planning Advisory Committee. We did this twice because it was early in January. We advertised the proper way in December, but we also put another one advertisement in the local paper, the Progress Bulletin, just before the meeting. So that was an additional one. So on January 13th, PAC held a public information meeting. That's when the people learn about the application and no decisions are made and they get to ask questions. And this is under our public participation program. After that, it went to our Planning Advisory Committee for a decision or for a recommendation. So they decide on what they're going to recommend to council. And no decisions. Sorry, I'm getting mixed up here. Oh, so there's a full staff report and PAC made a recommendation to council. At first reading, which is February 25th, we sent an advertisement to the paper again. public hearing advertisement. Letters were mailed to the assessed owners, and we had done all this, and it was scheduled for March 24th, and then we were shut down because of COVID-19. So what happened after that? A number of journalists and a number of regular papers were not being published. They were e-editions, but not an actual physical paper. So what to do with that? What we did is we went with a provincial paper. We went with the Herald, and we advertised twice with that. Just hang on, I'm losing my papers here. So we did that because under the MGA 2061, we have to give notice of public hearing in a newspaper, which is circulated in the municipality. So the progress bulletin was looking like it was just going to be an e-edition only. So we went with the Chronicle Herald, which is the provincial paper, which is a physical paper and the e-edition. This was done well in advance, so a long time ago. So we had that set, and it was advertised properly. Also a question whether this is a valid public hearing, or can we actually do a public hearing for through Zoom? And other municipalities have done this. On March 22nd, our minister, Chuck Porter, Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, sent a directive to all municipalities, villages, including HRM, to discontinue holding meetings in person and instead only hold virtual meetings by video or telephone. And as this one will be, they must be recorded and the minutes posted on a public website within 24 hours. And just as an aside, Project Luneberg has been holding virtual meetings, and we did have a Zoom webinar. We had over 50 people participate, so that went well. And also as part of Project Luneberg, we had a video presentation on YouTube, and we had 400, and I checked this morning, we had 497 views. So this does work. And a lot of people have participated online in Project Luneberg anyway. So here we are today, a public hearing. Today we'll have our presentations, our oral and written submissions. And you can close the public hearing today, or we can also defer closing it till next time if we need more time, which we'll probably run out of, or if there's additional input that council would like to defer, that is absolutely fine. After the public hearing, council can make a decision. So second reading and approval. And if they don't give approval, there's no refusal. So there's no taking it to the Utility and Review Board. The application ends. If it's positive, we have to send it to the province for review. It's also an option that if council doesn't like any of the options, or doesn't like the proposal at all, that they could also refer it back to the planning advisory to come up with another option, or if council has another option or idea, they can always send it back. So it's not a done deal in that way. So here is the amendment. It's a change in the future land use map, which is a policy map. What this is not about, it's not about infilling the harbor. It's not about allowing new residential development in the marine industrial zone. It's not about allowing group residential with ground floor commercial buildings as part of a comprehensive development. And that was the concept plan that was shown over a year ago, March 2019, that showed the condos on the waterfront. This is not about that at all. It's not about being a first step in allowing new residential development, and it's not about changing the uses that are permitted in the marine industrial zone. Also like to note that we do not have any applications for changes in the marine industrial zone. So this is the only application regarding this property that we have. Reason for the request. ABCO wishes to have the flexibility to expand their operation as needed. Right now we have regulation that anything in excess of 25% of the ground floor area of a 1996 foundation, you can't do it. You can't go any more than 25% on the sides or on the front. You can in the back, but that's not going to help this application. And to be subject only to the marine industrial zone, so the underlying zone. They would like the ability to expand and use more modern cladding, so a continuation of the vertical steel cladding that's on the building already. So the reason for the request, the applicant wishes to enlarge the current industrial space by adding to the current metal clad manufacturing area. So that's the blue circle. Right now, the ability to expand is only about a 50 by 50 foot addition. So that's not going to help. They want to double their capacity. They also wish the ability to have future expansion to the west behind the houses 3 and 4, and that's the yellow circle. And where these properties are located in the architectural control area, Part 26G of the land use bylaw applies, which has restrictions on design and cladding, as well as the limitations on the size of additions. Also here, the roof line will be a little bit different because right now there's difficulty with snow load and the angle of the roof. So it will be a little bit different in any new addition. So the marine industrial zone is where uses are encouraged to go. This is where ABCO should be expanding. They're in marine industrial area, which allows industrial and marine industrial use. So they're located in a zone where they're supposed to be. It's meant for industrial activities. So there's no issue with the zoning on the property. If you look at the yellow circle, a subdivision would be necessary, and that's just to reconfigure the lot lines, and that's an internal process. There's no public input on that. So the policy behind this, the intent of the policy is for new main buildings and additions to be similar to those pre-1940 buildings within 300 feet. So this is the heritage design aspect of it. Property information. We have roughly 7 acres of land, 6 lots. Marine industrial zone in the industrial designation, and there's a small number 6 is in the residential zone in the residential designation. Surrounding uses are residential, marine industrial, and institutional in the area, which is a school. Heritage, it's not in a heritage conservation district. It's not a designated municipal heritage property or provincial or federal. So the Camp Norway, the barracks, it doesn't have actual designation on it. It's not within the UNESCO heritage site, but of course it is the site of Camp Norway. So here are the properties. 1 to 5 are in the marine industrial zone, and number 6 is in the residential zone. Oops. So land uses. Number 2 is where the proposed expansion is going to be. Now, right now, I'm going to try to show you that. If it works, it's good. If not, just someone call out and tell me it's not working.
We're not seeing
You should
anything,
be
Dawn.
seeing the expansion, proposed expansion, the 3D rendering.
No, it's not running, Dawn.
Okay, let me try to get out of this. Good, hopefully that worked. So that's the proposed expansion.
We didn't see it, Dawn. Not
This
in.
is Lightship Brewery on number 5. It's a brewery, and there's a seating area, food. It's what do you call it? Artisan food and beverage production facility. And this use is permitted in the marine industrial zone. All uses in the general commercial zone are allowed in marine industrial, with the exception of the residential uses. So no new houses can be built. And because obviously it's institution or industrial zone, there's great potential for land use conflict between residential and industrial uses. So here's uses in the past. The lands have always been part of a working waterfront. And at the bottom is Camp Norway Monument, which is maintained by ABCO now. So on lot 1, there's a driveway right now, and the Camp Norway Monument. Number 2 is ABCO and contains the barracks. So ABCO employs about 60 to 65 full-time workers in here. And number 3 and 4 are the houses. So number 3 is now used for storage, and number 4 is residential. It's a rental. It's people are living there now. So why are there houses in the marine industrial zone? They're there because they were constructed before the zoning was in place. When you list a property in the zone, it gives it more property rights. They're allowed to put an addition on, they can expand the use, they can rebuild if it's burned down. So the use is there, and it's allowed to be there, and it can be, excuse me, it can be expanded, and if it burns down, it's fine. So it gives it property rights, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Lightship Brewery on 5, and number 6 is a vacant lot. It had been severed from the parent lot at 97 Tannery Road. So it had been part of a larger lot, and ABCO bought it afterwards. So continuing with land uses. As we know, 81 Tannery has undergone a number of additions and internal modifications since ABCO was first founded in 1947. Current uses are considered marine industrial and industrial in nature, and fabrication occurs on the site, including purpose-built aluminum boats. There's also food processing equipment related to the fishery, so it does have a marine component to it. Lightship Brewery is considered general commercial, which is permitted, and the 2 homes are listed. So those are all the uses on these sites. I must say that manufacturing at ABCO has a rather symbiotic relationship with the other industrial and marine industrial uses. And this type of company contributes to the overall value of a working waterfront. So everybody works together and makes a stronger working waterfront. I should say that there are 7 homes that are listed in the marine industrial zone as existing permitted uses. So land use designation. The preservation and protection of Luneberg's waterfront is an important component of planning documents. So we know this. We know that our working waterfront is important, and we have policies in our municipal planning strategy to protect it. It's noticed that much industrial activity occurs on the waterfront. And it also notes that we have very limited additional development potential on the waterfront. So we don't have a lot of space left, is what it's saying. So we have to be really careful what we do with this industrial lands on our waterfront. And continued use of the waterfront for industrial activity is to be accommodated and encouraged. So we have policies for that. The marine industrial zone allows for industrial uses and general commercial uses. So why would that happen? Well, originally in 1996, the marine industrial zone didn't allow for general commercial uses. And immediately after that plan was put in place, there was an amendment to our documents to allow for these general commercial uses. So anywhere in the marine industrial area, you can have things like a retail store. You can have obviously something like Lightship Brewery that has a small craft brewery and restaurant, those types of things. So that's why that's there. So we know that. We know that all the properties are industrial except for one. We know that any proposed expansion of ABCO would occur in the marine industrial zone. So there's no issue with the marine industrial zoning. There is an area of friction between the intent of the policy to allow for industrial uses and the overlaying architectural control provisions, because it limits the size of the addition and the cladding and those types of things. So there is friction. Architectural control. So the preamble and the architectural heritage of our municipal planning strategy sets out the council recognizes the potential for social and economic benefits of preserving heritage in Luneberg and is committed to its protection. It also acknowledges, and this is in our MPS, that council recognizes that the town is a living community, not a museum, and that architectural change must be accommodated. And architectural controls are a way of ensuring the protection of Luneberg's built heritage. So it's different than the Heritage Conservation District, different bylaw. Part 26G is the regulation, so that's in our land use bylaw. So in the architectural control area, if you meet the design criteria, you will get a development permit. And that's and it has to be similar to buildings within 300 feet. Now I did a very quick survey a couple of months ago for industrial and marine industrial zones they're similar to ours. And I spoke to the town of Yarmouth and CBRM, and they have no architectural controls or heritage regulations with their zones. So what will happen if the architectural control area are removed from these properties? They would still be subject to the marine industrial zone provisions, such as parking, signage, those types of things. Any new buildings or additions could have modern design and cladding. It wouldn't be controlled. There'd be no limit on the size of additions. So ABCO could do the expansion that's shown at the bottom in the photo there, or the rendering. There wouldn't be a requirement to be sensitive to the existing architecture of the area. So it could be modern design. And this could have a negative impact on the streetscape. And also the view from across the harbor would be an addition to the ABCO manufacturing facility. So let's see more industrial. What is the impact on tourism? It's an authentic industrial experience of a working waterfront, but it's also, what are the aesthetics of an industrial manufacturing facility? They're not pretty, because they're industrial. So what is the link? What is the link to the Heritage Conservation District? The Heritage Conservation District Plan and Bylaw has been in review for a while. They're looking at all the different regulations that they have currently in place and revising them. And the link is that we have policy now that sets out that council can consider the future expansion of the Heritage Conservation District to include areas of architectural control. So as I said, the bylaw has been under review. And after this application was received, the revised Heritage Conservation District Plan and Bylaw had been amended to allow for metal cladding. But we have to be clear that this revised bylaw has not been approved. It hasn't gone to council now, and it hasn't been in effect. So ABCO wishes to be removed from Tannery Road Architectural Control Area, and it does not wish to be included in the Heritage Conservation District. They wish to be subject to the same regulations as the Foundry, which is Marine Industrial Zone only. So whenever we have an amendment, the province, when we send it away to the province, they review it against the statements of provincial interest, which are drinking water, flood risk areas, agricultural land, infrastructure, and housing. So there's no impact on these statements, but there is a comment that we know that the properties are have a risk of being impacted by storm surge and tidal inundation. The uses on the property are marine related, which makes it beneficial for that location. So here's our bar graph. This is all based on an economic analysis done through Project Luneberg, and the discussion paper is up on the Project Luneberg website. There's a lot to talk about here, especially in these times of the pandemic, when our economy is being hit very hard. We are a tourist town. We're a manufacturing place. We're a community that people live and work. But having a diverse economy adds resiliency to a community. And both tourism and manufacturing play important roles in our economy. Luneberg's built harbor and built heritage and harbor represent two of the town's strongest assets to attract visitors and new residents. So let's just look at the bar graph. If you look at the red lines, what this represents is the most number of employers or businesses. So the most number of businesses in Luneberg are retail, trade, accommodations, and food services. Those are the big ones. If you look at the blue bar, that is the most number of employees. So health and social care, accommodations and food services, and manufacturing. And a little bit of analysis is if one employer has a lot of people working for them. So if you have your company and you have a lot of people working for you or business, it's in the sector of health and social care, information culture, accommodations and food services, and manufacturing. So that's what we mean by high level of jobs for an employer. So this is important. It's not just about tax base. It's about long-term, good-paying jobs. It's about bringing in skilled labor or hiring our own. If you are from Luneberg and you go to school, do you know that there's a good-paying job here in Luneberg for you? Can you return here? This speaks to youth retention. It speaks to families living and shopping and being here all year round. It supports a diverse economy. Sorry, losing my voice. So it's important for Luneberg to have a resilient economy with a number of different employment sectors. It shows the importance of the accommodation food services. It also speaks to the importance of manufacturing in the town of Luneberg's economy. This was a discussion we had at PAC, so it didn't form part of the report, but it was discussed at PAC because a number of members of our PAC are also on the steering team for Project Luneberg. Trends highlight a potential shift for Luneberg from small town central employers, so people living and working in the town of Luneberg, and we're shifting to become a bedroom community where you stay here, you live here, but you work other places, you come back and forth, commuters. And here are the statistics. The town's experienced a 39% increase in residents commuting outside the town for work and decreasing workers coming in. We're also seeing decreased mobility within the town itself. So if you're moving from one spot within the town to another spot within the town, partially be attributed to residents seeking work, and then if you're working outside somewhere else, you tend to move there if you're commuting. But there also speaks to other factors such as the cost of housing, the availability of housing, the availability of land, those types of things. So demographics at the bottom, I should say the provincial population and aging, it doesn't include HRM. So this is everywhere outside of HRM, which you'll note in the community profile, it's outside of HRM. So Luneberg is on the right. We're seeing a decrease in our population. Not too bad of a decrease. It's actually a steady decrease. So it's not as sharper as the rest of the province. So it's plateaued, the level, the rate of decline. We see we're losing our youth, we're losing working age people. We are gaining, retirees, retired demographic. So that's mostly attributed to, and you'll read in the documents, that people coming here to live are of a certain age. So we held a public information meeting, and this is just a summary of some of the comments. They're not weighted. It's just a summary of what was heard. So expansion is needed. We need to be competitive, grow businesses immediate in the future, and allow metal cladding for the welding. 2 ABCO houses need architectural control protection. Concern over protection of Camp Norway, we heard. Some felt that exemption for the MI zone should be from the architectural control areas. Architectural control is not appropriate for industrial. Manufacturing needs ability to respond immediately. Increased traffic and impact of industrial activities on residential neighbors. The authenticity, what's interesting, the authenticities and industrial use and evolution of the waterfront is relevant to our history. Keep architectural controls, but allow metal cladding. People would like to see the plans. And this is a big one. The plans were not available at the January 13th meeting. We hadn't received an application for Lightship Brewery yet, and the renderings weren't done. I just wanted to note that video that I showed you, it was viewed over 4,400 times on YouTube. So I haven't, once that came up, I haven't have a lot of calls asking about this as much. I think people were really uncertain because they didn't have plans in front of them, and now they do. Community needs jobs for survival, youth, family retention. Industry needs to expand and change to remain competitive. There was a concern for climate change and the impact on expansion, rightly so. Negative impact on the view, streetscape, and tourism, negative impact on heritage character of the neighborhood, and important to keep a working waterfront. So the Planning Advisory Committee later held their meeting, and they were going to decide on a recommendation on this to give to council. There were a number of options that PAC considered. They considered granting the request, so removing all 6 properties, partially granting the request by removing properties except the front portion of the lots containing number 57 and 61 Tannery Road. There was also an option to have special provisions in the marine industrial zone to allow compatibility in terms of, for new additions on marine industrial uses, compatible in terms of cladding and form with the existing and with the abutting in the architectural control area along Tannery Road. And there would also have to be an exemption from the size restriction. So a little something special for marine industrial uses in that under the architectural controls. An option was do not grant the request, so recommend against it. There were others as well. There was an amendment that was put forward to remove half of the property at 81 Tannery Road, leaving the former Camp Norway barracks within the architectural control area, and the other properties would also stay within the architectural control area. And there was also an option to remove 81 Tannery Road from the architectural control area. And those were generated from Planning Advisory Committee members themselves. What they did recommend was what is before you now, to recommend that council hold a public hearing on removing these 6 properties from the architectural control area. So here's their motion. As I said before, we did advertise this twice. And I think that is everything from me. Before I finish, first reading, there was some question about first reading. First reading is not a rubber stamp. It's basically to move an amendment forward so that people have an opportunity to comment on any amendment. So if you don't have first reading, you can't set a public hearing date. So that's why moving it forward, I mean, giving first reading and setting the public hearing date so people can comment on it and hold a public hearing. And that is it.
Thank you very much, Dawn. I wonder if members of council may have questions on the presentation at this time. We still do need to hear from our applicant, and we will be going through written submissions and offering those attendees present for this meeting an opportunity to speak on the topic as well. Just mention, just so that our attendees are prepared, that if there are people listening as attendees on Zoom with us and would like to offer some feedback at the meeting, they are certainly encouraged and welcome to do so. And they should have access to a raise hand icon as attendees for the meeting. And they should indicate when the time is, when the invitation is put out there with the mechanical hand raise that they would like to speak, and you will be given the opportunity. And there is also a chat option, which should also appear like a little speaker's bubble with the word chat under it somewhere on your screen. And the screens are slightly different depending on what kind of device you're using. But you should have those tools at your disposal. And through the chat, you can also type a question to which you'd like a response. And we can address that in this meeting as well. So I would just mention those things at this point so that people are aware and maybe have a bit of time to make sure they know how to use them. But we do have some the applicant to hear from next if there aren't any pressing questions of council. I see a hand raised, so I'll ask Councillor Risser if he has a question to put through to Ms. Sutherland, I'm assuming.
Thank you, Your Worship. Dawn, just a point of clarification that granting this request doesn't preclude us from doing anything we like in terms of the general plan reviews that we now have underway. So we could grant a request under the old map, but reintegrate the space in a new map. Am I correct in saying that?
Yes, you could do that because our documents are under review right now. Mr. Huskelson, once it comes into, if it goes forward, like if it's approved and it's in effect, he would be able to get his permits, like his development permit and his building permit if this was in place. So it would go forward probably. It would go forward, yeah, before the new plans are in effect, I would say, because it's time sensitive.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I'm just saying it doesn't preclude us from, like, the impetus behind this application was that the architectural control designations didn't factor in the potential for business expansion in the marine industrial zone. So if we had in future regulations that balance those two objectives better, to reintegrate a space into a heritage zone or whatever zone it winds up being, is not precluded by granting this application.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Risser. Any other points with respect to Ms. Sutherland's presentation at this point from members of council? Hearing none, then I would invite Mr. Huskelson to present to us now, if he would like, as the applicant certainly has that opportunity. So I see the mechanical hand raised, so I assume that's an indication that Mr. Huskelson's ready to go. So I'll turn the floor over to you.
Okay, can you hear me?
I can hear you clearly, yes.
Okay, okay, good. Well, first of all, I think I'd like to thank Dawn for that wonderful introduction and the comprehensive description of where we find ourselves at this moment. Additionally, I'd like to thank council for hearing this request again, and thank you to everyone joining online to hear what I have to say. These are obviously some odd times we're living in, but I think that we're all in agreement that if we could just follow the rules at the provincial government and the advice of Dr. Strang's team, hopefully we can get through this on the right end of things and hopefully get a summer out of this. Follow the example of New Brunswick and PEI. So, and just on that topic, I think I would like to talk a little bit about ABCO's COVID response. We've been working diligently during the COVID crisis to maintain a safe, prosperous work environment. And one very important lesson that this has highlighted, for me at least, is that ABCO is an essential service, whether it be our marine contracts for the Canadian military, our food processing machinery projects, or the R&D work that we performed to support the frontline workers in the health industry during this COVID crisis. And on that topic, ABCO would like to recognize all the frontline healthcare workers who put themselves at risk every day to keep us safe. And of course, another special thank you to the RCMP, the fire departments, and the EMTs and their supporting casts for their hard work in the month of April, which we all know was a difficult one, especially for those in Portapique and Truro and Enfield areas. So that being said, I'd like to expand a little more on what Dawn had gone through. So ABCO Industries is looking to be removed from the architectural control zones in order to expand our infrastructure. This expansion will help ABCO organize our operations to accommodate growth and streamline our manufacturing processes. This growth will bring jobs, new technologies, and added boat building work to the shores of Luneberg Harbor. ABCO would simply like to have a building built in the same style and materials that we currently have. ABCO Industries is looking to bring a significant European boat building contract in, which could secure work for years to come. Coupled with our food machinery group and our industrial fabrication group, ABCO will need to expand to handle the forecasted capacity. If COVID-19 had not hit this year, ABCO would have met sales and capacity targets by February, meaning there would have been a good chance we would have had to turn customers and projects away. Loyalty largely drives the food machinery market, which is why we do not like to let projects get away from us. Our industrial fabrication services local industry, and we feel we have a responsibility to continue to provide service to our local businesses. ABCO has been a staple of the Luneberg waterfront for almost 75 years. And we want to continue to bring the quality boat building tradition for which Luneberg is famous. So I guess that's a broad overview of the reasoning why we are where we are right now. And just more, of course, there's been a lot of confusion over the last year with some of the requests that I have made. And I think Don did a wonderful job of clearing that up, but I'm going to reiterate some points that, the brewery, which is, we've broken ground up there. It's been sitting out there kind of dug up for a couple months, but that's inching forward. But that brewery has already met all the many of the approvals and will be completely covered under the current laws and regulations that currently govern the zoning here. It is a separate business venture, and again, we'll be meeting the current regulations. In any previous talk of condo development, mixed use development, and infill. Oh yeah. Oh dear, yeah, I lost my. Any of the previous talk of condo development, mixed use development, and infill is not part of this application. To put in perspective, if we did apply for something like that, the same hurdles that exist at this moment would still exist whether or not ABCO was inside or outside of the architectural control zone. There would still be development agreements and public hearings and et cetera, all the more rigorous than what we're going through now, but it would still be very thorough. And I think my point is that this application in no way helps us nor hinders us, has no effect at all on if there was a further application. So I think that's enough on that. I think just in closing, ABCO has every intention in keeping with the traditional working waterfront of Luneberg. Again, we've been here for almost 75 years, and we consider us to be a flagship for the working waterfront of Luneberg, and we're hoping to continue that tradition for decades to come. Again, I want to thank council and everyone that has attended, and I guess I look forward to hearing what people have to say. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Huskelson, for the presentation and for bearing with us through the unforeseeable, I think, delays to this whole process. So we're glad that we're able to carry on and continue, albeit in a different format than we're all used to.
Yeah.
So we do have some written submissions that have come to us with respect to this. Oh, sorry, Councillor Risser, did you have a question of Mr. Huskelson?
I did, thank you, Your Worship. Jason, if you recall, when this first came forward, I made a motion that was overruled because of the urgency of the request to refer this to our general planning processes. And I'm just wondering if you can comment on if that urgency is still there in light of everything that's happened in the global economy.
Yeah, so winter is coming, and the contract that I keep speaking about is still very much on the horizon, and as we're probably, geez, my production manager would strangle me right now, but if I had to guess, I would say we're 60% the way through the first prototype, and we fully expect to be seeing, a significant number of those boats coming through here. So our intent, we've been talking to we've been getting some guidance from people in government, having them make connections for us, hopefully being able to work with some lean consultants, and other manufacturing consultants with the tentative hope of seeing something going in the ground by late fall. And I think that our partners in Europe, they're still very, they're definitely still anticipating that we are going to see something soon. So yes, there is still an urgency.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else have questions of Mr. Huskelson from council at this point in time? No, appears not. So we will move to that next item in the process of going through a public hearing, and that is to receive written submissions. And Ms. Sutherland, I think I will turn over to you because I think you are handling those on our behalf.
Sorry, forgot to unmute. So we received 3. They came in after the deadline, but they have been circulated to council. Don't know if people in the audience have seen them yet, but they are in the updated council agenda package. So I'll read them into the public record so everybody has a chance to hear from them. And this one is from John and Gail Patriarch, and of course, John and Gail live on Tannery Road. I understand that there will be a public meeting at the request of ABCO in regard to their application to have 6 properties on Tannery Road removed from the architectural control area. Since I cannot be at the meeting, I wish to comment here. It was my suggestion back on October 21st and stated in my letter to you, Arthur McDonald, our heritage manager, that it was a mistake to remove properties designated within the architectural control area, thereby defeating the purpose of the designation. I stated further at the time that your current plan for the new architectural control area for some reason excluded those properties on Linden, Medway, Yonge, and Falkland Streets. I feel these should be included as well. By excluding them, you invite property owners to apply to be excused from the plan, thereby defeating your purpose. This is exactly what is happening now, with ABCO requesting that their properties be removed. I hope that you will give this serious consideration that it deserves and deny their requests. Yours sincerely, John and Gail Patriarch, Tannery Road. So the next one I have is from Wilfred Moore. Your worship and councillors, this letter is with regard to the advertisement entitled Town of Luneberg Public Hearing Online, which was placed by the town in the Chronicle Herald newspaper of Halifax, Nova Scotia on Monday, the 20th of April. It is indeed interesting that the town decided to publicize within the advertisement in a Halifax newspaper. To date, I have not seen this ad in the local Progress Bulletin newspaper. On Monday, February 10th, the Planning Advisory Committee of the town met. Many interested citizens, including yours truly, attended the meeting, which included input from the Heritage Advisory Committee of the town on the ABCO and Amero planning applications, together with presentations by the 2 applicants and concerned citizens. This was followed by the vote of the Planning Advisory on whether to recommend to Town Council that it send the 2 applications to a public hearing. Notably, before that vote, Councillor Matt Rizzer made the point to the Planning Advisory Committee, and its recommendation to the Town Council was voting only on whether to send these 2 applications to a public hearing and not to indicate that this committee had decided to amend the municipal planning strategy map to future land use map. Hence, the vote was in favor of recommending to Town Council that it allow the 2 applications to go to a public hearing. The above mentioned advertisement states that Town Council has decided to conduct a public hearing of its intention to remove 6 properties from the subject land use map in accord with the application of ABCO. Further, Town Council has decided to conduct this public hearing online via Zoom webinar and YouTube viewing only technologies. I humbly suggest that this matter of proceeding is an unjustified circumvention of and suppression of democratic rights of citizens. A public hearing is meant to provide a forum at which all members of the public have the full opportunity to express their thoughts on the matter under consideration to their elected representatives. We need to acknowledge that these technologies are not available nor used by all citizens. I'm disappointed and disturbed that Town Council would proceed in this manner. Thus, on behalf of all citizens who will be unable to participate in this public hearing and the limited notice of it to the public, I ask Council to cancel this public hearing online. All Nova Scotians are functioning under COVID-19 restrictions, and therefore I recommend that Town Council await the easing of those restrictions, thereby enabling all citizens the opportunity to participate in the conventional public hearing process. In the event the town council proceeds with the public hearing online, I wish to record my opposition to the intention of town council to amend the subject land use map by removing all 6 properties pursuant to the application of ABCO. However, I am in support of removing the subject land use map only those properties required by ABCO to construct the addition to its present building in accord with its presentation to town council and the public. Thank you for your time and consideration of these important matters. Yours truly, Honorable Wilford P. Moore, QC LLD. That one and, oh, okay. And this one is from Oliver Osmond of 93 Bonavista Court. I'm going to take a drink, just hang on. This is a long one. I am writing to you in the double capacity as a member of the town's Heritage Advisory Committee and a local resident, the entry to whose property is just a few meters from that of ABCO on Tannery Road. I write because, unfortunately, I shall be away from Luneberg when the Planning Advisory Committee meets next week, and very possibly when the matter is placed before council. The requests of Mr. Romero and of ABCO to have their properties removed from the architecture control area regrettably involve a direct clash of 2 important principles. The difficulty the PAC and council face in arriving at a decision on these applications stems from this clash. The first principle is that the removal of individual properties from controlled or zoned areas should only be permitted in the most exceptional circumstances. This is true anywhere, but especially true in a very special and historic town whose livelihood depends to a substantial degree on its unique history and character. Only a few properties are allowed to be removed from a controlled area. Pressure will surely mount for others to be allowed to do so, and pretty soon, rather than having a coherent, logical, controlled area, one will have, as one contributor to the PAC's public information evening pointed out, something more like gerrymandering congressional district to the south of us. The second principle is that Luneberg needs to be much more than a tourist destination and a retirement community. It is essential that it have a strong economic life of its own. Many have heard me say that Luneberg must not become Venice, also a UNESCO World Heritage Site. That city, which I love and had visited many times, no longer has a genuine economic life aside from catering to a huge number of visitors. When I first visited 60 years ago, the historic city had more than 3 times the resident population that it has now. That sort of decline must not be allowed to happen here. To prevent it, local businesses must be encouraged to thrive. ABCO has applied for a removal of its 6 properties along Tannery Road from the architectural control area because it has a good reason to believe that it can gain new contracts and expand its current business if it can construct additional facilities in which to do so. The HAC has devoted considerable time to a careful discussion of both these applications before passing motions that recommend to the PAC that the application should be denied. But it does not mean that members of the HAC are insensitive to ABCO's future needs. The irony is that ABCO's problem is timing. As members of council and PAC will be aware, the HAC has spent an immense amount of time developing a proposed substantial revision of the town's heritage bylaw. One of the very significant elements of this revision is that it is proposed that the existing Heritage Conservation District and the architectural control area should be in future be subject to identical controls and permits. At the present time, additions to the existing buildings in the ACA are limited to an expansion of 25% of the existing footprint. If and when the proposed new heritage bylaw comes into effect, there would no longer be such a restriction in the marine industrial zone, as it is also the case with waterfront buildings in the Heritage Conservation District. If ABCO could wait until the new bylaw is in effect, which I assume they cannot, their problem would be solved. Because the HAC is anxious to preserve the principle of integrity of the ACA while being sensitive to ABCO's needs for significant expansion, the motion to recommend the denial of their application included the proviso that the use of metal cladding be permitted under the revised Heritage Conservation District Plan and Bylaw for industrial buildings and the new town waterfront buildings area, where it is fitting with surrounding buildings. At its January 20th meeting of the HAC, the HAC agreed to the following addition to the proposed new heritage bylaw, specifically designed to meet ABCO's present and possible future needs. 4.13, metal cladding in the Tannery Road waterfront building areas. Notwithstanding anything contained in Schedule D design guidelines of this bylaw, metal cladding may be used on industrial buildings located in the Tannery Road waterfront buildings area located in Newtown, as shown on the waterfront buildings area map, provided the metal cladding have a matte, dark, or medium tone color. Exposed bare metal cladding, bright reflective shiny metal, and light colored cladding material shall be prohibited. For the sake of clarity, this provision does not apply to those buildings located in Blue Nose Drive waterfront buildings area, located in Old Town, as shown on the waterfront buildings area map. 4.12, new industrial buildings in the Tannery Road waterfront building areas, new provision. Notwithstanding anything contained in Part 4.3 of this bylaw, new industrial buildings located in the Tannery Road waterfront building area located in Newtown, as shown on the waterfront buildings area map, may receive a certificate of appropriateness by the heritage officer without a public hearing process, provided the development conforms to all other provisions of this bylaw. For the sake of clarity, this provision does not apply to those buildings located in the Blue Nose Drive waterfront building areas located in Old Town, as shown on the buildings area map. ABCO has asked that all 6 of its adjoining properties should be removed from the architectural control area. There is no possible justification for this request. Retaining several of them within the ACA does not inhibit in any way the company's intended expansion of its manufacturing facility. 2 houses, 57 and 61 Tannery Road, should remain within the architectural control area. The purpose of the Heritage Conservation District and the architectural control area is as much about total streetscape as it is about the character and preservation of the defined features of individual buildings. Tannery Road has some of the oldest houses and barns within the town, and it is important that all properties directly abut this road should be retained within the architectural control area. ABCO has revealed recently that it has plans for the construction of a craft brewery and pub on the point of land, Lot 5, on the map at Schedule B of PAC's agenda package for January 13th meeting, PID 6038-6018. The drawings and plans for this development were on display at ABCO's recent open day and have been printed in part in the local paper. It is very evident, confirmed in conversation with the architect, that the design is intended to conform to the Heritage Bylaw guidelines. This is one of ABCO's properties, is the most prominent in the view across the harbor from Old Town waterfront, and in the view enjoyed by many visitors, often by coach load, from further along Tannery Road. It is important that this particular property remain within the ACA, and the very fact that the proposed development of it is intended to conform to the heritage guidelines reinforces the point. The adjoining property between this and Tannery Road, Lot 1, PID 6005-3188, should remain within ACA. It is almost as prominent in the view as the one in which the brewery is planned. ABCO's current desire to enlarge its existing manufacturing building does not include this property, and there will be nothing to prevent ABCO from making a new use of this entirely vacant property once the new bylaw is in effect. They just have to conform to the usual application process. Similarly, I do not believe there is a case for removing the very small Lot 6, PID 6067-2839 from the ACA. This leaves the much more difficult question of the remaining larger property, Lot 2, 6005-3196. Here, some suitable compromise needs to be found. Ideally, the proposed new heritage bylaw should now be approved and put into effect as quickly as possible, and that would solve ABCO's difficulty. But I am aware that the company wants the freedom to expand its manufacturing facility much more quickly than that. I have wondered about the possibility of allowing the temporary removal of this property from the ACA, bringing it back into a controlled area when the new bylaw comes into effect. But I am advised that there are legal barriers to this possibility. It was also suggested when this was being discussed at the HAC that a new separate building could be constructed very close to the existing facility. More square feet could be permitted than in a standalone building than in addition. With the intention that this and existing manufacturing facility could be joined together once the new bylaw is in effect. There is a stronger case for allowing this one property to be removed from the ACA than there is for any others. But this property does include Camp Norway, which has considerable historical significance and is an important part of the Tannery Road streetscape. A suggestion has been made that only the portion of this property nearest to the harbor should be removed from the ACA while keeping Camp Norway within it. Is this a possible compromise? Some way needs to be found of enabling ABCO to expand its current facility that stops well short of allowing all 6 properties to be removed from the ACA. ABCO's problem is purely a temporary one. They cannot wait for the new heritage bylaw to come into effect. But even if one of their 6 properties is removed from the ACA, this will be for all time. It makes little sense to try to solve a temporary problem with a solution that will stand forever. To remove well over 7 acres of land adjoining the harbor from the ACA would be to undermine the whole concept of the ACA and HCD. Oliver R. Osmond.
Thank you, Dawn, for reviewing those written submissions for us. Actually reading through them so that we got the full content of the submissions. Are there any comments or questions of council with respect to those at this point in time? Yes, Councillor Risser.
Just one, Your Worship. I note that Mr. Osmond in his submission said there would be legal difficulties to choose to reintegrate the area into a new zone that was for heritage control. And Dawn, you seemed to suggest to my question earlier there were no such barriers. So just a clarification there.
I don't know where that legal advice came from. It might be that we do have policy to allow an architectural control area to go into a heritage conservation district. Perhaps he meant that if it's not in an architectural control area, it wouldn't automatically go into this new heritage conservation district plan and bylaw. I think that's what it is.
Yeah, and I would just, for further clarification, I think on that, suggest too that it's determining architectural control areas and heritage controls on areas of our community bring with them significant obligations of the property owners. And so these aren't requirements that we would take lightly or that any council would take lightly, I think. So when they're established already, you know, homeowners are well aware, and property owners and or should be or can be have that information, and to do it, which was a very difficult process in the 1990s when these were first introduced, particularly. But it went through a very lengthy process as well. So it's not a simple thing to do, I guess I would clarify. So that all being said, we are at that stage of the process where we would certainly look forward to any comments from those attendees who are joining us via Zoom and indicate that they would like to speak. And I do see that we have at least one mechanical hand raised at the moment. And I will enlist the help of staff to ensure I don't miss folks who have something to say. But I have Nathalie Irving showing a hand and hoping to speak. So Nathalie, you would like to address this issue?
Please.
Very good. You've been enabled, I see. So please go ahead and tell us what you'd like to say.
Okay, thank you. My name is Nathalie Irving. I'm at 297 Pelham Street. So Madam Chair, the Mayor, and members of Town Council, thank you for your time today. Some additional information about myself. I am the chair of the Luneberg Heritage Society. I'm a member of the Town of Luneberg Heritage Advisory Committee, and I am a professional engineer. I'd like to share a few thoughts with respect to ABCO's Industries application to amend the Municipal Planning Strategy Map 2 Future Land Use Map by removing 6 of their properties on Tannery Road from the architectural control area. The Luneberg Heritage Society wishes to express concern over this request and asks council to refuse the application request. This site holds significance to the heritage of this town with its built heritage of Camp Norway and is part of the historic working waterfront. Understanding that the town does not control the water rights and that our World Heritage Site designation has no bearing on these properties. To treat these properties without consideration to their historical significance would be unwise, and this is not just another commercial zone. Personally, I am concerned over the various proposals presented to council for this property during and previous to this application process. I do not feel that they have any bearing or should have any bearing in your decision today because, to my knowledge, none have been approved and none have been taken off the table. Without the protection of the architectural control area designation, the door opens wider to almost anything with a marine industrial or commercial component being approved. The success of this business is important to me as a Luneberg resident because of the jobs and innovation that it brings to this town. However, that does not excuse council or Abco Industries from taking the necessary steps to preserve these properties. The promise of the current ownership to not make modifications to Camp Norway structures is not sufficient for protection. If council does not feel that it is pertinent to retain the current boundaries of the municipal planning strategy map 2 future land use map, then I would like to see a compromise, ideally through negotiations between the town of Luneberg and Abco Industries. This does not have to be an all or nothing situation. The decision does not have to be made today. The properties that include the residential buildings and Camp Norway structure, at a minimum, should be protected. Thank you. That's all I had to say. Thanks for your time.
Thank you very much for coming virtually to us with and bringing those comments. It's very important to hear from folks who would like to speak. I see several others who have gotten in the queue to speak with us. Before I turn to them, I'll ask Ms. McCallum, is there anything else in the chat that's ready to come before the council?
There is one further comment in the chat at the moment. My name is Ken Eisner. I'm an employee of Abco Industries and a lifelong resident of the town of Luneberg, residing on Kissing Bridge Road. I support Abco's request for removal from the architectural control area. An expansion of Abco Industries will have an immense positive economic effect for the town of Luneberg. New jobs, sustainability of a working waterfront, and a forward-thinking vision for the future will provide immediate and long-lasting benefits for all stakeholders. Thank you. I have one further if you would like them both at this time.
Or go ahead, and then I assume you see what I see, that there are two hands reading to be acknowledged. Okay, yeah, go ahead.
From Tyler Smith. I strongly support this project. It would be generating many jobs for people with various skills in our town for years to come. This is beneficial for many generations to come. It is expanding a long-time local company that has supported our families for many years and many more to come. One key advantage to Abco compared to some other larger companies, oops, sorry, I scrolled. One key advantage to Abco compared to some other larger companies in our town is their business cannot be picked up or moved away from our town easily. We must think about this as a long-term investment for our town and not just as a short-term concern for a few individuals. These jobs and expansions are much more fixed than a few other companies that also employ many people in our town. One key point from Project Luneberg is we want to embrace change and attract younger residents and families. Change is healthy, change is progress. Tyler Smith, 217 Centennial Avenue.
Thank you, Tyler, through Heather. And so I have Sally Gerhardt, who had indicated she would like to speak. So next, and then there's Sheila Gallagher waiting in line. So Sally, are you able to share with us?
I can, if you can hear me.
I can hear you well. Go ahead.
So yes, Sally Gerhardt, a property owner across the road at 56 Tannery. And also the company I work with, our family company, also benefits from trucking freight in and out of ABCO. But my observation, I have studied a lot of the history of ABCO as well, but ABCO has long been a supporter of the town and respected the town, always welcomed the Norwegian Guards, for instance. A lot inside of ABCO, if people might have seen at the open house, shows that support. But I just feel that it's time for the ABCO's only shown respect for the town. I think it's time for the town to respect what ABCO feels they need to do for their operation, which is a critical part of the town. That's all I needed to say.
Thank you very much for bringing your perspective. And Sheila Gallagher has indicated she would like to speak. Sheila, are you able to chime in?
Yes, can you hear me?
I can. Go ahead.
Oh. Well, first of all, I'd like to thank you for this opportunity. I'm Sheila Gallagher. I live on Tannery Road, 144 Tannery Road. And I just wanted to I wanted to say a couple of things. I also want ABCO's business to be successful. I support development on ABCO's properties, including expansion of their facility and any concessions necessary to accommodate their growing business. However, ABCO's requesting all 6 properties to remove from the architectural control area. My concern is, what will future development look like beyond their plant? I think new development is a good thing, but is it enough to hope ABCO will build something that's going to be keeping with the character of the town, unless there are heritage guidelines to ensure this is done? So if there was any way that, we could exempt some properties to accommodate the expansion, I'd be very much in support of that. But to exempt all 6 properties, I just oppose that request. So thank you, and that's really what I wanted to say.
Thank you for sharing your concerns and your perspective. We have some more other folks here lining up, so I'll continue on with the stream we have. And thank you who've spoken so far. I think you've all identified yourselves and your address, which is something we ask of people who contribute to public hearings, and I didn't state that as clearly as I should have from the outset. So if you wouldn't mind in making your own self-introduction, provide your civic address as well when you speak. So next in order is William Gerhardt. Able, Billy, to unmute and join the meeting.
Thank you, Your Honor. Can you hear me okay?
I can, yes, please go ahead.
And thank you, Council, for allowing us all to be able to join today in difficult times. I too am a property owner on Tannery Road. And, we also have another perspective. So obviously we're concerned about our own property, but we also support ABCO. We support all industry in Luneberg, because being in business in Luneberg is not sometimes an easy task. We're in the service industry, so we've served ABCO Industries over many years, and and we appreciate what they're doing, but we also appreciate the fact that, you know, sometimes we need to expand, and I think that Dawn sort of touched on it in her earlier presentation. ABCO isn't the industrial zone. They do build watercraft for the Navy, for other industry. And I'm familiar with the property lines because we own property across the street, but we also work there. So for ABCO to expand, I'm sure they will have to redraw lines within their lots in order to accommodate the building that's there. Where else would we like to see them in Luneberg? Obviously, I don't think anybody that spoke or anybody around the table wants to see ABCO have to move somewhere else, but logically they build boats, they have to be in the water. So I don't really see that there's many other places that they could go within Luneberg. And I also don't want to see them change the face of Camp Norway. So to me, it's very logical that they build on the ends in the back, away from the street. It keeps Tanner Road intact. And to me, the Camp Norway is much more important than the rental houses that line the other side of the street. So you know, we have to be careful what we wish for as well. You know, houses, you know, the houses there, yes, they're old, but you know, when the school went in, that didn't change the value of the Spike Walter house, you know, if we want to call it that, or the Walters house or anymore. So, you know, I think we have to realize that ABCO has a great history of being very supportive of Luneberg. Look at the work that's done to maintain the building, maintain its history. And just because they build a new building, I don't think that it will be deleterious to Luneberg as a whole. And it's the best place, as Don Sutherland said earlier, where it can be. It's in the marine industrial zone. So the other thing that I would also like to add is, you know, there's a lot of employers outside of your chart, and you know, we are a direct benefactor of Sally touched on it earlier, you know, trucking and other work. So when you have an industrial hub, it also allows your service hub to grow. And Luneberg does not have, when you walk down Blue Nose Drive anymore, the industrial hub is smaller and smaller. And, you know, ABCO, give them credit, is really one of the last, you know, the foundry to a much lesser extent, but they're the last progressive industrialist really in Luneberg. And while we all want to maintain Luneberg for the town that it is, we also need industry as a basis for all of our service industries to grow. So I just wanted to thank them for doing what they do, and I support their further expansion of the request. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gerhardt, for your contribution. I see we have a couple of other hands waiting, but also some chat is building up. So Heather, could I look to you to speak to some of the folks waiting on the chat line?
Oops, sorry, just unmuting. Yes, I have 3 further comments on the chat. The first one, my name is Andrew Miller. I live on 177 Creighton Street. I would like to say I'm here to support ABCO's request to expand. I'm an employee of ABCO in the shipping receiving department. I deal with all materials coming in and out. Since I have worked here, I have been asking for more room space to organize our materials because we are running out of space. Also, I think change is a good thing, and moving forward, we need to change to expand our town and the families that live here. Comment number 2 is from Scott Robertson. Hello, council and residents of Luneberg. I am Scott Robertson of 173 Green Street and a 29-year resident and employee of ABCO. I'm the production manager that Jason spoke of and reiterate what both Jason and Ken mentioned. Additionally, the career I have had at ABCO allowed me and my wife, Patty, to move here and raise 2 children while supporting the town, schools, hospital in many ways, as does many other existing and hopefully new employees that will be required in the future. Respectfully, Scott Robertson. And the third is from Shauna Miller. My name is Shauna Miller, and I live at 177 Creighton Street. I am in support of removing ABCO's 6 properties from the ACA. I believe this is very beneficial for the town as it is creating year-round employment within the town, something Luneberg is lacking. I cannot wrap my head around the thought that people do not want a business in Luneberg to expand. Luneberg needs more year-round thriving businesses. This is a great opportunity for that to happen. And those are our 3.
Great. Okay, thank you. I see 2 more hands up, and then I think we will have a brief recess because we normally recess a bit before now, but it will give anyone else a chance perhaps to chime in or to check technicalities or whatever. But we do need to have a brief recess as well. So I have the 2 hands raised from 2 people we've heard from previously, but are asking to address the meeting, which is their privilege to do. So I would invite Senator Moore to speak to us first, and then Reverend Osmond as well would like to speak to the meeting. So Senator Moore, please go ahead.
Actually, can you hear me? It's Jane.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Sorry, Jane. That's not what shows up on the screen.
I'm so glad to get on that I didn't dare change anything, but anyway, I'm not my husband. And I do reside in Chester, although, as you know, I own property and love Luneberg with all my heart. I just had a question with respect to, I just saw in Dawn's notes something about Burns Island, and I have a question with respect to that as it relates to, and Jason, I don't believe has addressed this, with respect to any of these properties. I'm concerned about any infill or construction that would extend into the harbor. Perhaps somebody could answer that for me, please.
Okay, well, I will put that question, I guess, directly to Ms. Sutherland. I think you can probably speak to that, and if we need to go to Mr. Huskilson, we certainly can.
Sure. Burns Island is in the marine industrial zone now. So if there's any infill anywhere in Lunenburg, the zone is extended out into the water, into the new infill land. It's a great provision that was put there a long time ago. So Burns Island is marine industrial. It is not in the architectural control area. That's yeah. So if it was infilled, it would the land between where it stops now in Burns Island, marine industrial zone. No extension of the architectural controls. That doesn't automatically extend into the water. It's just the zone.
So are we saying then that ABCO could expand their properties to include Burns Island?
That's not a planning thing. Like, I don't give approvals for infill. It neither does the town. If it was, the harbor was allowed to be infilled by whoever approves that, not me, it would be in the marine industrial zone, but it wouldn't have architectural controls on it.
Okay, so that's very serious then, because infill would have a huge impact on Luneberg and its harbor as far as preservation and all the UNESCO things and so on. Okay.
I just wanted to clarify at the beginning of it, this application does not speak to any infill. Like it's not part of the application at all.
We're saying it could be a request later on then perhaps.
Anything could be. Yeah, I mean, sure. It could be on this side of the harbor. It could be on the other side of the harbor. I mean, it could be the family.
It would have to go through public And who knows? Yeah.
Yeah, it's not a municipal process. It's not a land use process if you infill your lands. If you do get all those approvals, whoever does all that approving of the seabed and buying of the seabed and other things like that, we have provision to extend the zoning. That's the extent of it.
Okay, thank you. I think I understand, but it's a big issue. That's all I'm saying. Anyways, thank you.
Thank you, Jane Seymour, for your question. And then we have Oliver Osmond. And is it you, Oliver, or is there another Oliver? I may be making assumptions again. So, are you able to speak to us, Oliver? Oliver, if you're there, we cannot hear you. Have you unmuted yourself? Waiting for an Oliver to speak, and I may have made a mistake.
I'm muted.
Oh, you're ready? We hear you now.
Okay, it says, I hadn't been unmuted by host, I think. I won't speak for very long because you've heard quite enough from me already. But I'd just like to say very few things. The first is that those of us who have an unease about this proposal are in no way against ABCO's desire to expand. ABCO needs to expand, and that is excellent. And the town's future economic life depends upon people such as ABCO being able to. The question is whether they actually need to have 6 properties all removed from the architectural control area in order to achieve that. I'm very sympathetic to their need, but I'm also convinced, as indeed Senator Moore said in his piece, that this could be achieved without removing all of the properties. And I really hope that the council will look seriously at that possibility. The second thing I'd say is that the proposed new heritage bylaw, if and when approved, really does try and cater to ABCO's needs. I regret the fact that that has been rather kicked down the street by the council. At the time that the Heritage Advisory Committee discussed all of this in January, we were being led to believe by council that the bylaw would come before them in the spring, early summer of 2020, in the hopes that it could be approved and in place in advance of the October 2020 election. I understand all the reasons why the council has decided to change that. I see the logic of waiting until Project Luneberg is complete, but unfortunately that does have a further effect upon ABCO's desire to expand. 2 very small specific points. Jane Ritzie-Moore asked about Burns Island. It isn't in the architectural control area, but it is proposed under the new heritage bylaw that it should be included in the expanded part of the Heritage Conservation District. And the other question that was raised by Councillor Rissa about the possibility of allowing ABCO to take property out of the ACA area at the moment and have it come back eventually into the Heritage Conservation District. The legal barriers to that I made reference to near the end of my letter were really the result of a discussion that I had with you, Your Worship, the Mayor, back in January, because I floated that possibility then because it seemed to me to be a very possible and fruitful way forward. And you were rather discouraging. You felt that there were legal problems about that. And certainly, I believe that ABCO, if placed in that position, would have the right to argue against it. But I still think that that is a possible way forward that should be explored. So my real emphasis is, I do feel there are ways of meeting ABCO's needs that are well short of taking all 6 of their separate properties out of the architectural control area. And I do hope that when you as councillors have further discussion of the whole matter, that you will explore them fully, as indeed I think the Planning Advisory Committee obviously did as well.
Thank you very much, Reverend Osmond. I would just to I think maybe clarify. Hopefully, I'm sorry if I suggested to you I have any legal knowledge or expertise, because I have none, and I'd like to make that clear to everyone. So if I was purporting to have some, my apologies. I think I touched earlier on when this was raised by Councillor Risser just earlier in the meeting, and with the same reservations that I probably was attempting to suggest to you, that I think it's once it's out, it is I would assume it to be very difficult to put back in, but that is an assumption on my part, and certainly it would be it would involve a process, and certainly property owners that would be affected would be given opportunity to speak to the matter. So rather than legal, I think maybe a procedural hurdles to get over to do that, and perhaps some calls about the ethical perceptions of putting it out and taking it back in may have been things that were in my mind, but they were my own thoughts and not coming from any particular area of legal or even procedural expertise other than my experience on council. So I hope that clarifies somewhat. But as indicated, I would like to, we don't have a lot of time left in our meeting, but I do think we should have a brief recess so that we can reset. I see that there are some more chats, perhaps, Heather, Ms. McCallum waiting for us. Is that correct? Which we would come back to as immediately following a break?
That is correct. I have one currently pending.
Okay, so if there are anyone else that would like to speak or to address the meeting, please indicate with a raised hand, or you'll have a few minutes to type into our chat, and council will have a brief recess. It is, I have 3:37, so I would suggest we come back at 3:45 to reconvene the meeting and hear if we have an opportunity to hear from anyone else before we draw a close to this portion of the meeting. So we will see everyone at 3:45, sorry.